Hey everyone, welcome back into our next section running through our chemistry unit. In this section, we're basically going to be focusing in on the periodic table and some of the trends along the way that kind of make the elements show up where they are on the table. I should kind of a note before we get started too far into the notes that are here. The first assignment really encompasses all of the notes that are here, and so if you were to complete the first assignment by answering the questions in full sentences, you'd really have the notes that are here plus a little bit more as well. It may help just kind of cut out on overlapping, copying down the same thing twice. And so I am going to run through the notes that are here, but I would encourage you to take a look at the assignment and see, if you can write things out in full sentences. Basically, you would be making the notes for the section and might save a little bit of time. So I'm going to get started up and go through our first set of notes for the periodic table. So we're going to start going through and talk about organizing the elements. And so obviously, as more and more things get discovered throughout our course of our history of the elements, we're able to add on a lot more. And so few elements were known for thousands of years. And so because of that, as of 1700, we only had 13 elements that have been identified so far. And we were just starting to kind of figure out what's an element and how is it different from a compound, and how are they unique, what kind of properties they have, and that sort of thing. So 5 more elements get discovered between 1765 and 1775, including 3 gases, hydrogen, nitrogen, and oxygen. And so basically with this addition of elements, chemists needed to find a way to try to organize them and come up with an idea of how they look on the table. So they used the properties of the elements to sort them into groups, and a lot of them were either based on their mass or based on what they reacted with. And so they're originally grouped into these triads that shared similar properties, and that was the chemist J.W. de Bruiner in 1829. And so he would have talked about these triads and how these elements were grouped together. But our modern periodic table hadn't really taken shape until about 1869 with Dimitri Mendeleev, and he's kind of considered the father of the periodic table. There's a really good YouTube video that describes Mendeleev and kind of his journey and how he took a look at the table by Hank Green, and would encourage that you check that out when you can, because it does definitely add a little bit more into how the periodic table kind of has its shape. So he published a periodic table that could be used to predict the elements, and basically he obsessed over the periodic table and their properties and what they reacted with, and was basically one of the first ones to kind of identify that there could be gaps in the table and elements that were yet to be discovered. So Mendeleev, father of the modern periodic table. So he arranged the elements in his periodic table in order, in some sort of order. Blanks were left in the periodic table to show that elements with certain properties were yet to be discovered, or yet to be found. So, for periodic law, when he first organized the table, he organized it by atomic mass. And so, for the most part, when you look at our modern periodic table, realistically, it looks like it goes by increasing mass, and that's definitely the general trend, is that from the top left to the bottom right, the atomic mass increases. But it doesn't necessarily work for every element going left to right across the table. There are a couple situations where the element that comes first is actually heavier than the element after it in terms of atomic mass. And so it caused problems with pairs of elements in the table, like, say, tellurium and iodine, for instance. So Mendeleev didn't know that the atoms in each element contain a unique number of protons. He didn't even know that electrons had existed at the time. And so that was something that definitely would have changed his viewpoint among many other viewpoints on how they'd see how this periodic table would go. So in the modern periodic table, elements tend to be arranged in order of increasing atomic number. And if we can remember from our previous section, atomic number matches up with our number of protons inside of the nucleus. So that's currently how we organize our periodic table. There's a repetition of properties with the elements when we look at the periods. So we've got rows or series, I guess they could be called, from left to right, and groups, which are columns or families that go up and down. So the period number gives the number of energy levels in an atom. The group number gives the number of electrons in its outer level or its valence shell. And so we talk about those for the representative elements. And if you look at the table up on the very top, you'll notice that some of them have A for the column and some of them have B for the column. So our A column represent our representative elements. So for periodic law, when the elements are arranged in order of increasing atomic number, there's a periodic repetition of their physical and their chemical properties. And so as we go from left to right and we move down an energy level or down a row, what we start to notice is all of the elements in the same group kind of obey the same general properties. There's a repetition of characteristics that show up. So for metals, nonmetals, and metalloids, for scientists to communicate clearly, obviously they needed to agree on the standards that they're going to use. And so we talk about this IUPAC term. It's basically like the equivalent of using the metric system. So the International Union of Pure and Applied Chemistry, it's an organization that basically sets the standards for all of chemistry. Like I said, it's kind of like picturing the metric system and how we tend to use things like meters, kilometers, that sort of thing. Instead, they basically start to identify what the atomic mass stands for and why we're basing it on 1/12 that of a carbon atom and that kind of stuff. So, three classes of elements. We've got our metals, our nonmetals, and our metalloids. And so across a period, the properties become less metallic and they start to go into a more non-metallic or gaseous state. And overall in the table, about 80% of them are metals, whereas there's a little chartlets here. Metals, they're good conductors, whereas nonmetals are poor conductors, except for something like carbon, for instance. Metals have high luster, so they reflect light, whereas nonmetals are dull, they absorb light. Metals are ductile, they can be pulled into wires, or they can be hammered or bent, whereas nonmetals are quite brittle. Metals tend to be solid in general, and again, there's some situations where that may not necessarily be the case if we were to look at something like mercury at room temperature, whereas nonmetals can exist as solids, liquids, and mostly gases. And metals can lose electrons to form positive ions, whereas nonmetals gain electrons to form negative ions. So our metalloids, we have this thing called the staircase. They're the 8 elements on either side of the staircase, and the exception to that is aluminum. And so they have properties of both metals and nonmetals. So if we were to take a look, I'll just scoot back to the first slide, just to kind of go through what some of this stuff would look like. So our staircase kind of starts to go down and then over, and then it just walks its way down here. Over and down, over and down. And so our metalloid group would really tend to start to make up all of the ones that are on either side of the staircase as we move from left to right. So excluding aluminum, so we've got boron going down, silicon, and then germanium and arsenic, and then antimony and tellurium, and then polonium and astenine. So that would be our group of metalloids that kind of share that transition. And if you look at your table, you should see kind of a thicker black line kind of moving down through this periodic table. And so remember, our columns tend to share similar properties, and as we move across, the elements are organized by atomic number, which is number of protons. It should give you at least enough information to definitely get started going through that first assignment. And like I said, if you start with that first assignment and make your own notes along the way, then you should be okay instead of kind of doing both and jotting everything down here and doing the first assignment. But whichever way you learn best is the way I encourage you to move forward. So good luck, and let me know if you have any questions.